So here's a thought. How could something as common as, well, as unremarkable as a simple garden flower,
Right.
how could that trigger a scientific revolution that just fundamentally changed our entire understanding of life itself? We're talking about Charles Darwin, obviously, but this isn't just about evolution today.
No, it's not.
That whole shift in human thought, it began, quite literally, with Darwin on his hands and knees in the dirt.
It's such a powerful image, and it really sets the stage for our deep dive today. Darwin's flowers, evolution, and the art of deep seeing. I mean, our sources really frame this around a crucial idea, the greatest human insights. They don't usually start from inventing something new out of thin air.
No.
They start from really looking at something everyone else just walks past. It's not that the world lacks smart people. It lacks people who truly know how to see.
And that is exactly our mission for this deep dive. We're not just here to, list off Darwin's greatest hits. We want to get into his methodology. We want to see how we can adopt that same practice of deep seeing to gain some real actual knowledge in our own lives, taking a page from maybe the greatest observer in history.
Exactly. I mean, the first step toward any kind of real awakening, whether it's personal or scientific, is just recognizing that the small facts, the tiny details, everyone else dismisses. That's precisely where the hidden machinery of reality is.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We have this romantic idea of scientific breakthroughs, a sterile lab, a microscope,
A eureka moment.
a eureka moment.
Yeah.
But the source material makes it so clear that Darwin's huge discovery, it started right in his own backyard.
Oh, not just in his backyard, but the discovery itself. It required this posture of humility. He literally had to lie down on the grass to observe a common primrose, a cowslet, just intensely.
For years, right?
For years. He spent years on these seemingly minor plants, just counting, measuring, and tracking these tiny little variations.
So what did he see? What was he seeing nose to petals of the primrose that everyone else had missed for, centuries?
He saw complexity. But not just complexity, he saw complexity with a purpose. Most people just see, a pretty yellow flower. Darwin saw a highly sophisticated little machine built for one goal, cross-pollination.
Okay.
The key finding was that these primroses, they didn't just look similar. They came in two distinct fixed forms. He called them the pin flower and the thrum flower.
The pin and thrum system. Tell us
Yeah.
about that, because that's the mechanical genius he spotted, isn't it?
It is. So in the pin flower, the part that receives pollen, the style, is really long. It sticks out like a little pinhead.
Okay.
But the parts that produce the pollen, the stamens, are short, and they're buried way down inside. In the thrum flower, it's the complete opposite. The stamens are long, and the style is short.
So why? Why would nature bother creating two opposing designs for the exact same species?
Because it forces the insect, usually a bee, to cross-pollinate. It makes it almost impossible for it not to.
How does that work?
Well, when a bee visits the long pin flower, the pollen sticks high up on the bee's head. Then, when that same bee goes to a thrum flower with its long stamens, the pollen on its head perfectly lines up with that flower's short style. The mechanics of it literally ensure a plant can't self-pollinate effectively. It demands a partner.
That's just a staggering realization. And that observation wasn't just, interesting botany. It had this radical implication for how we see existence itself.
What's really fascinating is that Darwin saw a functional mechanism. He didn't see a divine hand or just spontaneous beauty. He concluded this perfect interlocking relationship between the flower and the insect. It was the result of coevolution.
Coevolution.
This specific structure was hammered out over millennia, driven entirely by natural selection. It was life selecting itself to survive better, not following some grand blueprint.
I can only imagine back in the mid-19th century being confronted with a natural world that behaved like clockwork, stripped of any mystical purpose. That must have been deeply unsettling for the establishment.
It was completely revolutionary. It basically removed the immediate hand of a creator from the day-to-day running of nature. He replaced, "It is this way because God willed it," with, "It is this way because this mechanical version survived better than the others."
It forces you to look past the comforting story.
It demands you face reality as a mechanism.
And the depth of that observation, it allowed him to do more than just explain the past. It actually gave him the confidence to make this extraordinary, almost prophetic prediction.
Yes, exactly. His focus on function meant he could make these deductions that must have sounded like science fiction back then. He wasn't using massive data sets or computers. It was just pure, hyper-focused attention and logic.
And this brings us to that famous story, right?
Yeah.
The Madagascan orchid and the The impossible butterfly.
Precisely. Darwin was sent a specimen of this rare orchid from Madagascar, Angraecum sesquipedale. What made it so unique was its nectary, the little tube with the nectar. It was nearly a foot long.
Foot long.
Almost a foot long, incredibly narrow, and the nectar was only at the very, very bottom.
So most insects couldn't possibly have a mouth part long enough to get to that.
Correct. But Darwin, because he'd already grasped this central rule of coevolution, he knew the flower couldn't exist unless something was pollinating it. So he measured the tube and he declared, for this flower to survive.
Yeah.
There must be an insect out there, probably a moth or a butterfly, with proboscis, a feeding tube that is also a foot long.
Hold on. I mean, predicting a mechanism is one thing, but predicting the existence of an actual animal that no one has ever seen, that sounds like a massive leap of faith.
Yeah.
Couldn't it have just been a fluke of nature?
See, that's the core of his deep seeing. It wasn't a guess, it was mechanical inference. He had established that in nature, form and function are welded together by survival.
Okay.
If the flower has evolved a foot-long tube, then the pressure of natural selection must have created a pollinator with a foot-long reach. If the pollinator didn't exist, the flower would die out. And since the flower existed,
The moth had to exist.
it had to.
And the kicker, of course, is that decades later, long after Darwin's death, they found it. The predicted species of moth, now named Xanthopon morganii predicta, was found in Madagascar.
A perfect match. What Darwin showed was that deep observation and asking the right question, not who made this, but what mechanism is required here. It can reveal truths that are hidden in plain sight.
Small facts anyone could see, but that only one person bothered to connect into this chain of inevitable logic. So if we connect that incredible ability to the bigger picture, Darwin didn't just discover evolution, he discovered the fundamental essence of how life works.
Yeah.
Let's move to those 4 big insights about life that he basically learned from his garden.
Right. If we really look at the process he saw in the primrose and the orchid, you can pull out 4 powerful lessons that govern, well, all life.
Okay, start with the first one. It's one that really challenges our need for, instant gratification.
That's right. The first insight is that change is accumulative, not cataclysmic. Life changes not through these sudden, huge leaps, but from the smallest, almost undetectable variations, just accumulated over millions of generations. That tiny difference between a pin and a thrum flower, that seemingly minor thing, multiplied across time, creates a whole new dynamic.
That's such a huge shift for us. I mean, if you're waiting for that lightning bolt moment, the perfect job, the perfect partner, a sudden burst of wisdom, you're completely ignoring the quiet, continuous drizzle of change that's actually shaping your character.
Precisely. And that leads right into the second insight, the centrality of adaptation. All evolution, it begins and ends with the ability to adapt to the reality of your environment. The flower changes to suit the bee changes to suit the flower. They succeed because they're constantly adjusting.
So the lesson for us is that stagnation is death. And the fastest way to grow isn't through stubbornness, but through flexibility.
It is. The person who clearly sees and adapts to their environment, who accepts the facts life gives them, even the really uncomfortable ones, that's the person who evolves the fastest. You just can't grow if you insist reality should be different than it is.
And the third insight, this brings us right back to what made Darwin so unique, his ability to see what others just dismissed.
Yes. The nature of true intelligence is the ability to look deeply into what other people ignore. Darwin wasn't necessarily the smartest man of his time, but he was probably the most persistent observer. He asked the right questions.
Uncomfortable questions.
Deeply uncomfortable questions that annoyed the world and shook up these long-held beliefs. Real wisdom is about daring to ask those inconvenient questions about things that seem totally settled.
And then there's the fourth insight, which is maybe the most challenging one, philosophically. Mechanism versus mysticism. Things that look like divine meaning or some unique, beautiful purpose. They're often just the result of natural, blind mechanisms at work. This is the great lesson of shedding illusion.
We have to face reality and accept that the world was not designed for us. It simply is. And while that truth might feel a bit cold at first, our sources really emphasize that facing reality, accepting the truth of the mechanism, that is always the most liberating step you can take.
That really shifts the responsibility back onto us, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If the world isn't designed for us, then we have to take charge of our own design. So how do we translate these huge scientific insights from a primrose into something actionable for you, the listener, in your daily life.
That is the essential step, and we can pull 3 critical lessons from Darwin's work that apply directly to living consciously.
Okay, lesson 1.
Respect the small. Never, ever look down on the small details in your life or your routine. A seemingly meaningless flower, which everyone else would just ignore, it holds the entire history of evolution inside it.
Right?
If you ignore the small details in your own life, the tiny habits, the minor interactions, that passing thought, you are ignoring the raw material of your own evolution.
That totally reframes those, mundane recurring annoyances or small wins. They're not minor. They're the accumulative forces building your life.
Absolutely. Which brings us to lesson 2. Observe without judgment. Darwin didn't judge the flower, he measured it. Learn to observe the world as it truly is, the behavior of other people, the consequences of your own actions, not as you wish it to be. That's where real insight starts, when you stop projecting your hopes onto reality and just record the facts.
And finally, taking that focused lens and turning it inward. This is the hardest part, I think.
It is. Lesson 3, practice internal deep seeing. You have to apply that same Darwinian observational lens to the details of your inner life. Ask the critical, mechanical questions other people ignore. Why do you keep repeating that specific mistake? Why does this person trigger your anger?
Why do you stay in an unhappy relationship when the cost is so clear?
Exactly. Why are you truly afraid of change?
Those patterns we have. The self-sabotage, the excuses, those are the small facts we just bury because they're uncomfortable to look at.
Yeah, precisely. Our sources conclude that no detail in our lives is meaningless. We just haven't looked deep enough, or we haven't dared to ask the uncomfortable question about the mechanism that's driving our behavior. You have to ask, what conditions in my life allow this problem to survive?
It's such a profound contrast. Darwin dedicated half his life to getting on his knees and looking at a flower. The goal for you listening isn't to become a botanist. It's to apply that same level of deep, sustained, non-judgmental attention to your own life. To stop being a passive participant and start being an active observer. Not to become Darwin, but to become someone who clearly sees themselves.
And that brings our whole discussion full circle, doesn't it? From a simple primrose to the evolution of the human spirit. The scope of insight you can gain from just looking closely at what is right in front of you. It's staggering.
It provides a kind of necessary grounding, I think, in a world of just constant noise and distraction.
And if we're going to take one final provocative thought from this deep dive, let it be this. Nothing in life has meaning unless it's viewed under the light of evolution. And that applies equally to the long, slow, mechanical evolution of nature and the continuous day-by-day evolution of your own character, your own soul. The question is, are you paying deep enough attention to guide it?